6 minutes after 5 o'clock here at Newstalk 1010. Hello, welcome in. This afternoon, Giselle Kovari and Joa Bohem. Say it. I knew I'd muff it up.
Boheni, yeah.
We had this conversation just before we went on air where there was a whole bunch of alternatives. They're managing partners and co-founders of NGen People Performance with over 15 years training in performance consulting. They both specialize in sales, customer service, leadership, team building, Gen Y, and HR. They've presented to international audiences and co-authored 2 books, which we'll get to in a few minutes. They've devoted the last 10 years to researching the impact that generational differences have on organizational performance. Now, they've created solutions and programs, and as multi-generational workplace experts, NGen help their clients build strategies and programs that target, motivate, and engage their multi-generational workforce, both regularly quoted in newspapers, trade magazines, radio, and TV. So is it a generational divide out there that separate groups of employees, or just a misunderstanding between them? I found a survey just before the show. Apparently 60% of employers are experiencing tension between employees of different generations. Check this one. 70% of older employees are dismissive of younger workers' abilities, and 50% of Gen Y workers were dismissive of older worker abilities. Why can't we all just get along? This hour we'll work to find out, and also welcome your calls and comments. Welcome into the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ian.
When I first found out this is what we were doing, I thought, I am the Antichrist of what you people are doing. I represent that generation that really don't have a lot of faith in the younger generations coming up. Even walking in from the elevator, I was saying that you can usually tell the 2 different groups in a company because, there's the group that know how to do it and the people who went to university and read all about it. Can you really bring everyone together under one roof?
We can and we do. And the reality is that we all work in multi-generational teams today. So it's not even a choice any longer. Sometimes people said, well, I want to just only work with my own generation. And there's the 4 generations, traditionalists, baby boomers, Gen Xers, and Gen Ys. And you talked about, boomers and Ys already. And that's a big gap sometimes in the workplace. But the reality is we all work in multi-generational teams. So we don't have a choice any longer. But it's really understanding what are those friction points, those clash points, and then how do we overcome them to have a more productive and engaging team?
But if 70% of the old guys are sitting there thinking that there's only a 30% competency level in the young guys, and the young guys are looking up thinking, you know what, let them go off the side of the cliff and we'll do this the way it's supposed to be done. You guys got your work cut out for you.
Well, we sure do. And a lot of it is about perception rather than reality. So one of the first things we do is help companies and those leaders and those young guys and old guys realize that the perceptions they have are actually inaccurate. And so that they're defining things differently and they're approaching things differently, but the work is actually getting done. Because if it were actually the case that 70% didn't know how to do their job, companies wouldn't be successful.
Tell me about NGen. Tell me how it works. A company out there understands that they may have a bit of a divide and they phone you, and what happens at that point?
We've had the great privilege, Ian, of working with over 175 companies in the last 10 years. Fortune 500 companies, Ontario Public Service, federal departments and agencies. I mean, you name it. We've been in associations and organizations, large to small. But fundamentally, what they recognize is that there's been this clash point. And to your point in that survey, it's happening. The younger employees saying, you know what, I don't get my more experienced colleagues. We don't like to use the word old. A lot of people do. We say experienced employees, but they say, I don't get them. I have a hard time working here. I don't know why they don't let me, work at Starbucks. Yeah, do my thing. And the more experienced employees are saying, hold on a second, come here and Sonny, you're going to do the job the way I tell you to. And, this is the reason why we've been busy for 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, people said, okay, maybe there's not even 4 generations. Maybe we're not all that different. But today, we're swamped because the reality is that the Gen Ys are in the workplace. We can't avoid it any longer. And their values and expectations are very, very different. So we go in, we deliver keynote presentations, 60 to 90 minutes, half day and full day training programs, or we do consulting projects with our clients that are more in depth. And we go in and we provide learning based on the research and the work from our books around, to Joe's point, what are those generational differences? How do they define them? What does it look like behaviorally? We speak more around the behaviors than we do as it relates to the age ranges. It's less important whether or not you were born in 1965 or 66. What's more important is, do you act and think like a baby boomer? And if you do, then leaders in the organization need to know what to do to motivate and engage you. And the flip side is, if you are that leader and you then have a bunch of Gen Xers and Gen Ys on your team that are behaving a certain way, you need to know what to do.
But there's obviously a huge generational difference. If you were born in 1963, in 53, somewhere around there, you were pretty much taught to grow up, move on, get your stuff done. If you were born in the 80s, odds are you're in high school and your mom's still running after you with a piece of toilet paper. That has to reflect in the workplace.
And that's the entire premise, right? So you've highlighted exactly what the challenge is all those life-defining events or the way that we were parented or how the school system has changed has created different mentality within the workforce. And so organizations, in order to remain competitive, are recognizing that. And say in some sectors, it's still a tight labor market despite unemployment. And so the organizations need to be able to address this and leaders need to be able to say, okay, you who had the gold ribbon for every single little thing you did, how do I motivate you? How do I get
Great
you to
point.
do your job?
And reading up on it, that was one of the examples that stuck with me in that my group, we'd get an annual review and you knew you were doing a good job if you didn't get canned.
Right.
That was pretty much the job. Whereas a lot of the Gen Y testing, they're used to constant, here's what you're not doing, here's what you are doing. They tend to need that feedback, which for somebody like me is really an alien concept.
Well, it's maybe not easy or not fun. I mean, we have leaders speak about how much more they have to do now, right, as a leader, and how much more is expected of them.
Am I doing okay? Am I doing okay?
Yeah,
As a matter of fact, no!
And, jokingly, we say in some sessions, you used to get promoted because you were really good at what you did, not because you could lead people,
Absolutely.
right? And in the last decade or 15 years, we've said, now you better be a good people leader, too, and we're going to measure you and reward you on that. We've had leaders still look at us and go, but I don't like people. Right? That's not why I got promoted. But the world has changed.
One of the interesting things that we were talking about just before we came in here, and as you were talking, it hit me just how much workplaces have changed. What I was used to was that show up, do your best, stay until midnight. If you got to stay until midnight, get the job done, go home. And like I said, assuming that all went well, you've got a job and hopefully you'll get a review at the end of the year and hopefully things will get better. And I said to you guys, have companies really changed that drastically in the last 10 years?
Mm-hmm. Well, and they have, right? I mean, work-life balance initiatives, flexibility, being able to create different types of work environments. And they've done this because they recognize it has an impact on the bottom line. This is not about holding hands and singing Kumbaya. We say to our clients, it's not about just, being nice. Not that there's anything wrong with being nice. We often joke. But it's about, driving greater performance and productivity from your people. And they know that if you create greater flexibility, we talk about it in our books and certainly interviewed a number of outstanding clients that have done that really well, that they're going to be able to have higher levels of engagement. They're going to have higher retention of their star performers, and they're going to keep their customers and clients happier.
Intergenerational workplace experts, Giselle Kovari and Ajowa Baheni.
Yeah, you're getting there.
Managing partners and co-founders of NGen. Hopefully by the end of the year I'll get it right. By the way, if you'd like to reach them by phone, 416-362-7564. And you can find a ton of information on their website, ngenperformance.com. It's all one word, NGEN performance.com. And check out their Twitter feed also, NGen_training. I'm Ian Grant, and this is Ask the Expert, Intergenerational Workplace Experts. Giselle Kovari and Ajowa Baheni are here. They're managing partners and co-founders of NGen. Just before the break, you said the term. I didn't, but you did. It's not people sitting around in circles saying kumbaya. One of the things that pretty much pushed me away from any kind of workplace come together and let's make this all work was I went through a phase probably mid-'80s to mid-'90s where they kept bringing in these clowns that were standing up in the front of the boardroom saying, we're going to be great, and if you just believe we're going to be great, we're going to be great, because making the difference is what you do, and people are our commodity. And just all this tripe. There was 5 guys wearing their blue shirts sitting in the front of the boardroom going, oh yeah, oh yeah. And 50 other people in the boardroom rolling their eyes going, what the hell is this? Do you find that these guys have really made it a little more difficult for you to get your message across, your legitimate message, as opposed to just those platitudes?
I don't think so, because I think because we also don't speak in platitudes, and I can tell you I was in a correctional services facility doing a session, and the perfect example of what you're saying, right? And I saw some corrections officers sitting there with their arms crossed going, yeah, lady. Yeah, lady, right? And I said quite boldly to them, I said, listen, I get that you're not skipping to work every day going, I'm loving it here, right? However, isn't it a better idea for us to figure out ways to get along a little bit better rather than worse, right? And so when you state it straightly to people, I think they also get that, hey, it does make sense. Why would I want to come to work and be miserable every day? Why wouldn't I want to figure out how to get along with you and work more effectively? And it's not get along. I may not like you, but it's actually
That's
that we
That's a beautiful point. You're absolutely right. No, right? Say it. Yes.
I may not like you, but it's let's work more effectively together. I think what also changed a lot of things, because we were talking 10 years, 15 years ago, what changed? I think it was the .com era, though, too, right? Because I was in one of those companies where we had the foosball table and the scooters around the office and, traveling overseas to India every 2 weeks and so on. But so what changed is organizations, all Xers, and not Ys back then, but Xers really wanted to work at those kinds of organizations. We streamed to them, right? And so then banks and other traditional insurance companies went, holy Moses, right? That's the kind of work environment that motivates those people. So we're not going to change. We're not going to have scooters at banks now. But what can we do in order to bring those people back into our work environment? Because otherwise we're going to lose out on a huge part of the workforce.
Just to add to that, I mean, the reality is that most of our organizations are still incredibly traditionalist in nature.
Yeah.
So the banks, insurance companies, oil and gas companies we work with, the government, I mean, it's still really traditionalist. And so the reason why we're busy is because there's still a huge gap. So what has happened is the organizations only moved a little bit or changed a little bit, but the younger workforce is coming in streams. And all of a sudden, they're saying there's a massive gap between what my expectations are of you as an employer, what my expectations are of you as my manager, as you said, right? Come in and give me feedback every day, or I'm going to have the technology at my hands, or I'm going to be able to work remotely, and what the organization is actually prepared to do. Because a lot of managers are not prepared to do that because they've got the mentality you said, which is, you know what, come in, do your job, zip it. And at the end of the day, you get your paycheck.
You get your check. Am I still here? Yes. Do you think it's getting better or worse?
Depends on which industry or which company you're talking about.
Okay, so let's not talk about radio, but for everywhere else in the world.
Media, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think we're probably a little Pollyanna-ish, fair enough, but I think it is getting better. There is an increasing interest and increasing appetite to actually do something about it. Maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, sometimes we were just checklist, right? HR, somebody said to HR, oh, I've heard about this generations thing. Let's bring somebody in to speak about it for 60 minutes or a half day. But now companies are actually doing something.
I walked headfirst into my own trap as we were talking before this, because what I was saying to you was just how much fun this place used to be 15, 20 years ago. I mean, this building, people were running up and down the corridors, screaming, swearing. It was a creative pit of pretty much pressure and insanity. As opposed to now, where people are a lot more careful. They're a lot more staid. And I said to you, it was a lot more fun back then. And you came back to me with...
Well, it was for you, Ian.
And you're absolutely right, because I didn't think of it that way. For the white guy walking around here, this place was heaven to work in because you could do whatever you want and get away with it. Yes, it really was. And over the years, especially the people that have been in this building and seen the changes, there's been an awful lot of pushback because they see these changes as constricting as opposed to encompassing a whole new group of people who are walking in here. I remember we hired a producer who ended up walking out after the second day. They just couldn't deal with the environment. And it was an environment that was totally normal to us. What? Right. So we swear a bit and we're yelling and stuff, but we're not yelling at him. It's just that's how it is. And that's when I think it really started to hit that maybe we need to pull ourselves from 1962 into
1992, at least, right?
And what you said also really resonated with me also, and that is maybe teaching people how to interpret what that other group are saying and thinking can go an awful long way. They're not just a bunch of lazy little bastards that don't want to come in because something's wrong at home or the sun didn't rise or whatever. My group will stay usually into my group. Here we go. But seriously, I mean, we
work hard hours and walk uphill both ways in the sun.
But is it fair to say that for us, work came first? You're going to do the white guy thing, and you're going to be right. Work came first. That was the important part. The family, they could take care of themselves. That's not my responsibility. It's completely changed.
And when we talk about it, right, in our first book, we looked at different organizational factors, and loyalty is one of them. And that's your point. Where does people placing their loyalty into the business, into the organization? And in a traditionalist world, I mean, if your manager worked until 7, you worked till 7:05.
Absolutely.
You were in 10 minutes before them, and you left 15 minutes after. And there was no way, if your manager canceled their vacation because there was a big project, so did you.
And we liked it.
Yeah.
And we thanked them for it.
Exactly. And baby boomers had to do that. I mean, let's be honest. Baby boomers had to do it. A lot of boomers say to us in our sessions, God, I wish I didn't have to do that, but I had to. Guess what? Because there's 9.6 million baby boomers in Canada. Highly competitive marketplace. You don't do your job the way you want it, you were asked to leave. No bones about it. Gen Xers didn't want to do it, but you know what? We came out of a market where there weren't a lot of jobs and it was contract, and we said, okay, well, we're going to bide our time here. But as soon as there's something good, and as Joe has said, as soon as the .com era went, they just left. They left those traditionalist companies en masse. Or they said, I'm going to work for myself. And your Gen Ys come in and they say, no, I still want to work at the bank or the insurance company, right? I still want to work here. I want to work in government. They still know that it's one of their top quests to work in government. But they come in, they say, but I'm not working the way you used to work. I'm not going to do it that way. And we hear from that from every type of employer. I mean, we've worked with police forces and the military and places that are incredibly traditionalist in nature. Even there, the officers are like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to do all those kinds of shifts.
I have to take a break. I don't want to, and I keep pushing it forward and forward. You're listening to Ask the Expert here at In-Depth Radio News Talk 1010. Phone lines are open for your calls, comments at 416-872-1010 on SL Star Talk Star 8255 and toll free 1-877-518-5151. Intergenerational workplace experts Giselle Kavari and Ajoa Baheni are here. They are managing partners and co-founders at NGen. Phone number for the office is 416-362-7564. The website NGen Performance, NGEN Performance.com. And you can also check them out on Twitter at NGen_training. Let me just ask you, companies obviously aren't hiring you and bringing you in for reasons of altruism because they just want all the employees to be happy together and work together. There has to be a tangible result to what you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
Well, not only a tangible result, but a tangible pain factor. So when they see how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars they're losing because people are leaving in the first 6 weeks, 6 months,
really?
Right? Then they say, well, why are they leaving? Mm-hmm. When they see that projects are not getting completed because people can't work effectively together, they start analyzing and they say, this is costing us money. It's costing us key clients. It's costing us money. It's point blank, it's costing us money. Mm-hmm. That's when they look at it saying, what can we do differently? But if they didn't need to, I agree. There's many a circumstance where they wouldn't.
What do you think would happen if they just didn't, though? Because it sounds like, based on the stats I quoted off the top of the show, it's not getting better. People are becoming more and more polarized and more fed up with people at both ends of the employment spectrum.
Well, I think, we've seen it on teams where we've gone into organizations and we've worked with a team and they've been highly dysfunctional for many, many years. And it's actually just having the opportunity to talk about it in an environment where you can be real. And generations is one of the last areas of diversity that we can actually put on the table and have a real conversation. And people will say, they'll say, you know what, I think that Gen Ys are, and they'll use some really, negative ways to describe them.
Babies.
Entitled, lazy.
Entitled,
well,
lazy?
Babies. I mean, they say a bunch of things that aren't nice about it. That doesn't mean that Gen Ys, don't have some great traits. They do. But they say that, and then the Gen Ys in the room look around and they go, this is what they think of us?
See what I mean? Babies. This is Ask the Expert here on I'm kidding. I got to take a break. We're going to take a quick break for traffic, and we'll be right back. Ask the Expert continues here on News Talk 1010. Ask the Expert here on In-Depth Radio News Talk 1010 and intergenerational workplace experts Giselle Kavari and Ajoa Baheni are here. They are managing partners and co-founders of NGen. And we've been talking about the generational differences that exist. Just quickly before we get to the calls, and we will, 416-872-1010 on SL Star Talk Star 8255. We keep talking about the different generations of people at a company. You've broken them down pretty much into 4 distinct groups, right?
So there's traditionalists, baby boomers, Gen Xers, and Gen Ys. Now, when we look at the age ranges, there's not a lot of traditionalists left in the workplace because they're between 69 and 92. But most organizations still base their work culture around traditionalist values and expectations. So what does it mean to be loyal? What does it mean to have a work ethic?
Great question.
Right? What does it mean to respect authority? Many organizations, as I said in the last segment, are very, very traditionalist. You got baby boomers, 50 to 68. They tend to represent the bulk within most organizations as it relates to managers and certainly senior leaders. Gen Xers, 34 to 49. I mean, we're sort of sandwiched between been living under the bulge of the 9.6 million baby boomers our whole lives. Joe and I are Xers and proud of it.
Oh, there.
Exactly. Started the business because we're Xers. And then Gen Ys. I mean, they're only 14 to 33. 14, a lot of our clients, sure, they don't hire 14-year-olds, but some of our retail clients, right, we work with a lot of retailers, they're saying, okay, yeah, we have them in our
Parks
and I can see where the difficulties come for you guys, because as you were saying, you were going over the older group, loyalty and work ethic and all that stuff. And as you're saying it, I'm thinking, because it doesn't exist anymore. Of course you're going to have to talk about it. Loyalty means not giving up on your employer for the first good opportunity that comes in, or, working later that night, even if you can't necessarily get paid because the company needs it. It's funny because before this, I wouldn't have realized just how easy those thoughts are to permeate into my way of thinking. The loyalty one was especially one that jumped out to me because is there really loyalty anymore? I mean, I'm not saying that the companies haven't done it to themselves, but I'm going to guess that especially the younger you get at a company, the less loyalty I think you're going to define loyalty, because maybe I'm not.
And I think that's the perfect question, Ian, right? It is, people say all the time, well, don't we, we all have the same values. All the generations have the same values. We say, absolutely. It's not that we value different things. It's how we define it and where we place that value that's different or demonstrate it. So when we speak about loyalty, I mean, our first book was called Loyalty Unplugged. And it's because of that. When you think about unplugging it, and absolutely organizations broke that deal with employees.
Yes.
It's not because employees wanted to break it. Employers said, hey, we can't guarantee you lifetime job security. You're not going to get your pension and benefits for life if you work here. You own your career, you own your retirement. And the employee said, okay. When we look at loyalty, you look at one end of the spectrum. In traditionalist world, you worked for an organization. My dad worked for 32 years for Ontario Power Generation.
You got to Bell Canada at 19 years of age, and you left when you were 65.
Absolutely. And, had one employer for your whole life, maybe even sometimes for many people, one or two jobs their whole careers. You go to the other end of the spectrum, you look at Gen Ys, and they're loyal to their pack. I mean, anyone who's got kids knows this. They move and travel in packs, and they stay connected. And they're now loyal cross-functionally across the whole business. So it doesn't matter if you're in the operations department or you're in the sales department. Those Gen Ys are talking and sharing everything about the organization, what they think about it. They're Facebooking it, they're tweeting it, they're IMing it, and they're now loyal to their pack. And we've had a client where a retailer, and there was a division within the organization. A whole group of Gen Ys quit on the same day, and that's what happens.
Wow.
Yeah, and so organizations stand up and go, "Holy smokes, what's going on here?
Yeah, no kidding.
We got to fix this problem." So again, this is not about just being nice. This is because there's a business reality here, and if we don't fix this, we're going to lose our customers. It's about driving better profits and revenue, and we can't do that if a whole department or a whole team leaves.
No kidding. It's funny because, as you said, the social media part. As the older guy walking around the office, suddenly social media has become what smoking used to be. People can't smoke in the office. You knew who the group were who were getting up every 15, 20 minutes and taking 15, 20 minutes for a cigarette. But meanwhile, you were working. And now it seems to have changed where, they don't take a cigarette anymore, but they're, YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, that's where that time is being wasted. I've heard us old people saying it that, if they spend as much time at work as they do on Facebook, maybe we get some work done in this company. You walk into a boardroom where that is a split. You walk into the damn boardroom and they're sitting tweeting your conference at one end of the room where the other guys are probably writing it down in their notebook.
Then there's the young people sitting in that boardroom and saying if all those people would spend less time writing it down by hand on a piece of paper,
it would be so much more
we would be so much more productive.
You're absolutely right. 416-872-1010 on a Cellstar Talkstar 8255. Kate, welcome in.
I just have a quick question, and I don't know if this has actually already been addressed, but I was curious, when you are working with a lot of these more traditional companies, what is the sort of major pushback that you have, and if it's common amongst all of them? And when you do get that pushback on sort of instigating these changes that you talk about, how do you work with them to sort of improve that or get them to sort of accept that, to sort of change their company culture?
So, Kate, I think I heard part of the question, which was how do we help companies improve? Or I'm going to hear the part of the question I want to answer, frankly. Yeah, exactly. Is how do we help companies improve their situation? And I think the first part was how.
And what's the pushback from
traditional?
What's the pushback?
Yeah.
Well, one of the major pushbacks that we get for sure has anything to do with flexibility, really. Anything to do with fluidity or flexibility, because we say Gen Ys and certainly Gen Xers, and it goes back to the .com era, want that flexibility within their day to get all the things done that they need to get done. And so for a lot of organizations, that's hugely problematic, because they say if I don't see you sitting at your desk, right, for 8 hours straight, you're not working. And so it's about helping organizations recognize how they can create that workplace where they're still getting stuff done, and yet have not necessarily have everybody tied or chained to their desks. So that's one of the big pieces in as it relates to traditional type organizations. And how do we help them look at it? Well, we go back to what's their pain factor, right? So we might look at their engagement scores. Companies now run engagement surveys that used to be called employee satisfaction surveys. And we say, you have a whole bunch of people here who are in a generation or one or the other that are not engaged. And we know engagement leads to productivity. Or we look at their turnover rates. I remember one time we worked with an oil and gas company, and they looked at their first year stats of who leaves within the first year. And they found that 67% of the people who left in the first year were Gen Xers. I would suggest to you there's a problem, right? There's something happening in that organization that does not reflect, does not appeal to the values, behaviors, and expectations of Gen Xers. So they work to fix that. So, and those are the kinds of things that we help. And so we do that either through consulting or through training. We do a lot of leadership training, helping leaders just recognize how can you be more effective every single day. That's going to make your life easier. Because this is also, Ian, you know, when you're saying, do corporations want to do this? Corporations are made up of people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so those people, do you really, again, you know, I want to go home and not have to complain for half an hour about the people that work for me or with me, as we like to say.
Yeah, and who doesn't want to go to work? I mean, you have to do it anyway. You might as well find a way to enjoy it. This is Ask the Expert here on Newstalk 1010. I'm Ian Grant, 416-872-1010 on a cell, star talk, star 8255. Intergenerational workplace experts, Giselle Kuvari and Ajoa Baheli are here, managing partners and co-founders of NGen. Fascinating hour, fascinating calls, and we'll get right back to them as Ask the Expert continues here on Newstalk 1010. Bob is in Toronto. Good afternoon, Bob. Welcome in.
Quick question, similar to Kate's, actually. I'm in a job that requires me to make change, make improvements and things like that. But I have a lot of people in the company who are close to retirement, and they don't want to adopt to that kind of change. How do I deal with that?
Well, it's a great question, Bob, and if it makes you feel better, you're not alone. Yeah, it is a challenge. And first and foremost, we say it's not that, you know, more experienced employees, again, we don't want to refer to them as older, but that they don't want to change. And sometimes people say that, well, they're stuck in the mud, they don't want to change, they're resistant to change. And you know, that's not always entirely a fair statement. There's resistors to change in all four generations. You know, we've written about in our leadership book around change and just the human nature that we all struggle with that. But if you're a leader and you're charged with implementing change, Bob, part of it is that you need to get people on board faster. And it's understanding the different viewpoints that the generations bring to this. In a traditionalist world, for people that have been in their roles for a long time, or as Ian's talked about, organizations that were sort of the way it used to always be, for them, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're not changing things. I've done it this way before and it's worked, and now you come in and you tell me I'm going to have to change my world. You know, we start to progress. We go to baby boomers and they say, well, I'm not so excited about change. Well, they're not so excited about it because they had to go through a whole heck of a lot of it. And change was always good for them. Right?
They heard you're going to fire them, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, great, I heard change, you know, get on the bus, get off the bus, kind of rah, rah, rah. And they went to work and their past wouldn't let them in the building. And they got laid off. And
that was the other radio company.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak to that, but I'm sure not Bob's team. Gen Xers say around change, well, they're skeptical of change. They don't believe that you as the leader, Bob, is going to help them necessarily. They're saying, what's in it for me? You got to answer that question. The only question really you need to ever answer with a Gen Xer is what's in it for them. And you might be thinking that yourself if you're an Xer, like what's in it for me to even implement this change. You have to be able to get them on board. And if they understand what's in it for them, they're going to be pretty quick to adopt the change. And we go to Gen Ys and we talk to them about change. We say, what do you think? You know, your organization should change. And they look at us and they go, duh. Yeah, it should change. It should change faster. It should be better. It should be, you know, doing this more. And why are we taking so long? And they get impatient with organizations because they're saying, you keep telling me we're changing, but nothing changes. It's all the same. One of the things for you to help overcome, you know, the ways in which folks aren't necessarily coming on board as quickly is first and foremost identify where are they resisting the change and what are the personal obstacles. And we talk about it in our book, Upgrade Now. What we recognize is that as the leader, part of your role is to help people through those obstacles. Not that there's not going to exist. You just want to move them faster. You don't want them stuck. And helping them. A lot of times, more experienced employees are scared of the change. They're afraid that A, new technology is coming in. They don't know how to use it. Yeah. B, they're not going to be given the support of the tools or the training to do it effectively. Or third, sometimes they say, you know what? If this changes, I'm not needed. I'm not even important anymore to the team. And so where does my value come in? And then I'm at risk of maybe not being valuable and potentially, you know, not being needed.
I went through a disastrous upgrade scenario at one of the companies where they brought in a new computer system. And it was a bunch of older, whatever the word, I can't remember the word used for whatever we were. But
experienced.
Experienced, yes. It was a bunch of experienced users who were very, very experienced at the old way of doing, the experienced way of doing things. The mistake that the company made was coming in and saying, okay, and here's what it's going to do, and this is how it's going to do it, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to make your life easier, and so we're going to show you how to use it. Had they walked in, and I didn't know this before it happened, but it was a hell of a lesson to learn. Had they walked in and said, okay, how do you do it now? Let me take the way you do it now and show you how you can do it better using these tools, it would have been an entirely different outcome.
That's one of the best ways to, again, engage experienced employees is recognize the expertise they already have.
One of the areas that we learned was these guys could offer the developers tips and some ideas on what to implement into the software. And by the end of, I'd say, probably about a month and a half in, they were the guys that were training the young guys and really enjoying being a part of the experience.
Yeah.
But that initial, this is it, here's how it's going to work, and you're going to use it, and it's going to be great, and here's the manual, read it, and if you have any questions, ask me. And you could just see the whole place it just ground to a halt. So saying that same message to 4 different groups of people in 4 different, subtly, but different ways, is that something that you encourage people to think through?
Absolutely, and to prepare. I think a lot of times when we communicate change, we don't prepare. We don't think about how do I deliver that message so that everybody hears it. Certainly people in the media do it, right? And they think about their audience, who's their audience. But I think as leaders, sometimes in the workplace, when we're so busy, we just want to get the job done. We don't think about who am I talking to and how can I position that message in a way that they can hear it. And they want to hear it. And I think everybody wants to have a form of control.
Yes. They want to hear it, but they want to understand it. Because the worst part is giving them that message. Their eyes glaze over, but they're too worried. No matter which group we're talking about, they're too worried to say, I didn't really understand what I just heard.
As we always say that it's like a Snoopy cartoon. They hear wah, 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 until it resonates with them, right? And so that's what we teach people. We teach people how do you deliver messages in a way in which somebody will hear it. And when we do sales and customer service, we say, how do you sell the way the buyer wants to buy, not the way you want to sell?
And you brought up a perfect example with cell phones before the start of the show, which is, like it or not, there are different ways of marketing a cell phone to somebody who's 14 years old, somebody who's 25, 35, or 50. If the companies can understand how to sell their audience on the different ways, you'd think that they would be able to look inside and understand that same communication skill is required looking inside as well.
Well, and that's the thing. In communication workshops, we talk about that. What's your follow-up? What's your medium? And what's your key message? And you need different key messages for the different generations that you're trying to tap into, as Joe has said. And, and even the mediums. I mean, we had a great example. We're doing a session at an oil and gas company, and a manager came up, and his young Gen Y was there, and she says, I'm really upset because you never communicate with me. I'm trying to reach out to you, and you don't give me any feedback, as you said, Ian, and you're not touching base with me. Yeah. And he goes, what do you mean? And she goes, I text you every single day. And he goes, text? He goes, I didn't even know I had text on this phone.
He's my hero. He's my hero.
He totally disengaged her, and she's thinking that he's really ticked off with her.
Somewhere my wife is laughing because the kids insist on texting me, and I just can't be bothered checking. Here's how it looks. This is Ask the Expert here at In-Depth Radio News Talk 1010. You guys have mentioned your books a couple of times. We want to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about them. Intergenerational workplace experts Giselle Kavari and Ajoa Baheni are here. They are managing partners and co-founders of NGen. Conference Board of Canada is having a Generations 2014 conference coming up, and NGen is also the lead sponsor, and they're going to be sharing some insights there. We'll talk about that when we come back. If you'd like to reach them, 416-362-7564. 416-362-7564 is the phone number. The website, ngenperformance.com. ngenperformance.com. Giselle Kavari and Ajoa Baheni are here. They're managing partners and co-founders of NGen. You guys mentioned you got a couple of books out there. Just tell me quickly, what are the books and what can we look forward to reading in them?
Our first book is called Loyalty Unplugged. Giselle mentioned it, How to Get, Keep, and Grow All 4 Generations. So it's really an overview on strategy and HR. How do you get them? How do you keep them? And how do you grow them? It's really that simple, all 4 gens. And then our second book is Upgrade Now, 9 Advanced Leadership Skills. And that was as a result of working with those 175 organizations in the last first 7 years of our company. We're now in year 10. We just looked at what are the hottest topics that those companies, what are they struggling with? What are they dealing with? Performance management conversations, managing virtual teams, social media in the workplace, career development conversations. So we picked the top 9, the hot 9, and we wrote a book and said, here's how you do it. Here's how you lead it. Here's how you manage it.
And these books are available at ngenperformance.com,
they are.
Right? ngenperformance.com. You also have a Conference Board of Canada seminar coming
That's right. Yeah, we're the lead sponsor with Conference Board of Canada, their Generations 2014 conference. And so NGen's going to be there. Presenting some of our research, co-moderating the session, and there'll be a lineup of lots of interesting other speakers as well, talking about different elements of this generational issue in the workplace. And so we're looking forward to April 29th in Toronto.
And if people want to find out more about it, they can call you at the office, right? 416-362-7564.
Yeah, they can also tweet.
Call Giselle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, careful here. We're going to get busy here. They can can also tweet at CBOC_events. That's the Conference Board of Canada, or go to the Conference Board of Canada website to register.
And the website is ngenperformance.com, ngenperformance.com. We're really late. I had such a good hour. Thank you, folks. I really enjoyed this hour.
This
Hopefully you'll come back soon.